Velkommen til LØRN.tech, en læringsdugnad om teknologi og samfunn, med Silvia Ceres og venner.
Hello and welcome to a LØRN podcast series with the University of Oslo on the topics of going from data to insight. This series is going to contain 8 mini lectures in digital format and is supposed to work as a warm-up to the same course by the University of Oslo, being piloted in December. The University of Oslo course will be study credit giving and can also be used as a part of a greater degree. The topic I have today is digital twins, and my guest is David Cameron. Welcome, David.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you, Sylvia.
So we are going to talk for about 20 minutes about what is a digital twin, what are the necessary things to think of when you're creating one, and also how can digital twins be used in science. David, we usually start by asking the guests to introduce themselves very briefly. So would you please tell us who are you and why do you care about digital twins?
Okay, my name is David Cameron and I've been working throughout the last 6 or 7 years at the University of Oslo. I'm an Australian who managed to find himself in Norway about 28 years ago and have been working in the process industries since then with problems which were basically digital twins, but no one thought they were before the thought of digital twins came up a couple of years ago. So my whole career has been in digital twins without knowing it.
And you're staying in Norway because of the nice weather, or?
No, I've got myself a wife and 2 kids on the way.
And then you're kind of stuck. Similarly with me, except I believe that it's also probably the best place in the world to be if you're going to be a lady and try to combine work and life.
Yes, I could observe that.
So David, what is this thing called digital twin?
Well, it's an interesting concept. The Gartner Group, who's this group of very, very prominent IT consultants who tell CIOs around the world what they should know, put it at the very top of what they call the hype curve in 2018 and 2019. I think the idea of it is that we keep trying to collect data about things. And if you collect enough data, you see that you can create some sort of digital duplicate of things. It's also being led quite a lot by the gaming community and science fiction, where you have films like A Matrix, which portray a universe of something that represents you. And I think also last week, people at Facebook launched something which is very digital twinny called their metaverse. So we've got a situation where people are making a lot out of being able to make computer replicas of other things for certain purposes. And what we've seen in industry is that these sort of things have been used for useful things for many years, and recent changes in technology makes it more feasible to do more ambitious digital twinning applications.
So that's what I wanted to ask you about. Your phrase computer replicas is just another set of synonyms for digital twins. And many people would say, well, what's new? We've been doing digital models of things for a long time. And yet there is something that seems to be different more recently in terms of scale.
There's certainly something about scale, but what you come back to applications is that often the scale is very shallow, that you're able to do something that's very, very game-like around visualization of something. But for digital twins to have value, they've got to actually got to be able to enable some sort of valuable decision. And at the moment, there's a lot of, yes, we can get lots and lots of data, and we can possibly do simulations, or what is often the situation is that companies who've been doing something related to digital twins, like simulation, like visualization, like acquisition of data, take what they've been doing and say, this is all you need for a digital twin. So what is very important now is to not go for the very, very ambitious, marketable digital twin, which is like the European Union's digital twin of the planet sort of thing. Because what we really need to do is to build on the facilities we have now, the computational resources we have now, to create computer applications that enable us to make good decisions about things that we encounter in our life, about our experiments, about the industrial processes we need to control.
You're talking about a three-legged stool model related to digital twins. What is that?
Well, yes. When people talk about digital twins, a lot of the conversation then produces some really, really complicated architecture showing 5 layers of instrumentation, 140 different applications, and 7 layers of users. A simpler model of a digital twin, which is also something that is closely related to what the US military defines a digital twin as being, is about a model where you need 3 things to describe a certain object and its behavior. The first thing you need is a description of how the object is built up. In industry, that's called asset data. If you're a person, it would be your genotype, phenotype. Then you need some sort of simulation of what is the behavior of the thing that you're trying to twin. Now, you can either use physical models, or you can use machine learning statistical models, or the most fruitful way, we believe, is actually to try to combine those two into some sort of hybrid modeling where you use the machine learning to account for the things that you're uncertain about, and you use the physics to constrain the machine learning. And then the third thing you need is actually measurements about what the observations about what the thing is doing. Because we know all models are wrong. We know all descriptions of how things are out of date and inaccurate. And so you need to create this interplay between measurements, simulations, and the structural information about the thing to so provide the top of the stool, the chair, which is the decisions you want to support from using a digital twin, and a way of presenting it to the user in a way which actually makes it useful for the user.
So let me try to translate what you said into sort of a Lego language. And I'm going to try to use the human body as the thing that we're trying to make a digital twin of. And I believe that, as you said as well, they are becoming probably the most hyped topic, but also for good reason. I think all medicine is going to be using them quite heavily going forward. And so asset data, you talked about 4 things in this tool, the 3 legs and the top. So the 3 legs were the asset data. So that would typically be my genotype, for example.
Yeah, and it would be also how you're connected together, the anatomical knowledge about what makes a human.
So measurements of my skeleton, chemical measurements, perhaps.
That's right.
Of my,
And aligned to the fact that we know, we basically know
how to make a Sylvia. And
yes, that's right. And we know the basic structure of a Sylvia.
Right. Then the behavioral data would be describing, the blood system, the nervous system, and it would be modeling them and describing some physical or medical or biological chemical rules for how the system works.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Modeling a potential, modeling a blood flow, modeling the fact that you've got a pump going backwards and forwards, creating pressure waves that keep the blood flowing around, modeling the oxygen take-up, modeling metabolism, basically encapsulating the knowledge you have to be able to predict where you are now and predict what can happen in the future.
And that entails we have enough medical understanding of how the human body works so we can do this. And then the third leg, sorry?
And you got models.
Right. And then the third would be sensor data, which would be typically, let's say I build a little chip in my tooth or in my lens or here, and it's measuring my blood pressure, my hormonal levels, my metabolism, my blood sugar, etc.
Yes, exactly. So that's sort of the things you would need to do that, because we know the models need to be constrained by the measurements, and so you get this mutual checking and building up between the measurements and the models, so that the models are used to fill in where you don't have measurements and give you predictive power, and the measurements are used to make sure that the models keep tracking the actual real you.
And the really interesting stuff is when things go off the model, right? When something unusual starts happening. And is that the top of the stool? How do you model the decisions into this model of Sylvia?
If we move from a Sylvia to an oil platform, the things you are very interested in is not the boring reality of I'm sitting here producing merrily away. It is always the situation where either I want to do something, what are the implications of that? So moving the metaphor to a very successful practical example from the North Sea, which is about now 20 years old, which was the question that we are going to produce oil, gas and water in huge quantities offshore. We separate out the water and pump it back down into the earth, but then we've got this mixture of gas and oil. Do we build two pipelines, one for the gas, one for the oil? Or do we put this mixture of gas and oil into a single pipeline, and that single pipeline is 40 inches in diameter and 100 kilometers long, and send it to land? The problem with that is if you've got 100 kilometers of pipeline and you're putting in a multi-phase mixture, 2 phases or mixture of gas and oil, you've got the danger that you're going to get really big accumulations of oil in that pipeline, which will build up until you've got enough back pressure to push it through, and then you've got this huge slug of oil coming at you at your poor reception facility. Now, if you go to somewhere like Ormond Lange or Bigness or one of these reception facilities, you'll see that there's this huge structure called a slug catcher to take account of that. Now, the other challenge you have is that you've got very few measurements on that pipeline. You've got a measurement of what's going in and you've got a measurement of what's going out, and then you've got a couple of 100 kilometers of pipeline between those two measurements. And so to be able to build those sort of pipelines, you were really absolutely dependent on the ability to predict what was actually happening in that pipeline and use it in real time to A, detect when things were going to go wrong and you were building up liquid in the pipeline, and B, go as an operator and say, if I want to increase production a bit, what are the implications of that? How quickly can I do it? If I do it too quickly, about 2 days later, I'm going to have real problems with large amounts of oil turning up at the facility. And so the digital twin was designed to support exactly those decisions. And that technology is the technology which is more than any other technology, enabled most of the deep sea oil field developments of the last 20 years. And it's fundamentally a digital twin where you took a simulation, again, developed in Norway, a product called Olga, connected it to measurements and a description of a pipeline to so build a digital twin which supported two decisions. Am I going to have problems with my pipeline operation? And the other decision, is what I'm going to do as an operation safe and correct, given how this is going to behave over the next 3 days?
So I think that what you just described is extremely useful for us to have these pictures. And so I'm thinking any complex and large-scale system, and it may be a human body, like we started, or it may be an oil platform with hundreds of kilometers of pipes, subsea attached to them, need a very advanced computational model. And we use it to then make sure that the operation is as efficient and as safe as possible. And that's the sort of, we need to decide on what kind of decisions need to be made on the top of this tool in order to basically decide how we're going to use the model. I guess for a human body, it could easily be something along the lines of manage your health that companies like Apple and Amazon are beginning to sell to people. So, you know, you are not just waiting for symptoms to arrive, but perhaps you can be a little bit more predictive and even more, what shall I say, eat right, exercise right, manage your health for maximum effect.
Yeah, build up social credit.
Not necessarily just social health, I guess. So, David, tell us a little bit about the history. So is this, a long story?
It is a long history. It's really, if you look back to it, it's as soon as people started building mathematical models, they wanted to start matching. The whole test of a mathematical model is, does it describe the observed reality? So you could almost go back to the Greek astronomers, Ptolemy, with his model with these epicycles and circles going around, matching the behavior of the heavens. The model was very inelegant, and so eventually they got it sorted out when Kepler managed to provide these ellipses for the models. But as soon as computer models came along in the 1960s, people were starting to ask questions about what can I do by connecting those models to the actual thing I'm trying to model or observe. And so the first automatic computer control came along in the 1960s. In the 1980s, people were getting to the point where their models were getting very good. The process industry had developed a good set of models that were robust and useful enough to be connected to actual plants. And so what was called model-based control, in effect, was a very simple digital twin, which was used to revolutionize how you controlled oil refineries and chemical plants. At about the same time, the aeronautical mechanical engineering community, especially around NASA, coined the term digital twin, as a man called Michael Greaves is generally credited for having published a paper about that. And they were very interested not so much in the behavior of a large complex process system. They were very interested in building a replica of their product, be it a spacecraft or an F-35 or a car, which would enable them to simulate the behavior of that before it was built, and then also use it as a tool to follow up the operation of that particular product or piece of equipment. So you still have a very slightly different view between the process industries and medicine and the manufacturing industries, where the digital twin is very tightly linked to something they're going to make, to turn into some sort of product. So that's no.
Yeah, no, I'm just fascinated because I'm wondering if Norway might have an extra good reason to be interested in these industrial applications of both digital twins, but also of artificial intelligence related to them.
Yeah, I think Norway's actually been a leader in the industrial applications of digital twins through the oil and gas industry, and also potentially through the predictive medicine activities in the country. I have the impression by going to meetings in the European Union, that what we've done in the Norwegian oil and gas sector is something that is substantially more advanced than, for example, steel or pulp and paper or bulk chemicals. And that knowledge and confidence is something that we should be able to trade on once we're getting into this transformation of heavy engineering from oil and gas production into large-scale production of renewable energy and hopefully still process industry in the future.
I am dreaming of having, I know you're against the science fiction-y, too grandiose visions, but could Norway somehow translate what it knows from oil and gas to other resources from the sea and management of sea?
Definitely. The ambition to, in fact, if you're talking about scientific applications of digital twins, this is going to be a big topic in the new Science Centre at the University of Oslo, because what we see is that the meteorologists have been building digital twins for the last 100 years as well. They have a similar challenge to the oil and gas people, is it's very hard to build models, because you only get you have to build a model of the whole world based on the fact that you're only sending up 50, 60 balloons at various points. So you have that mathematical problem: how do I make my model fit an incredibly small amount of measurements? And so there is a great deal to be gained by bringing together all the observations we're going to be making of the marine environment together with models into a framework where it's easier for researchers to access the data, and it's easier for people to build applications which actually enable you to do smarter things around the marine environment. And we hope that we are able to create a digital twin platform that will enable biologists and meteorologists and climate scientists to collaborate around a curated set of data and validated models and a agreed description of what the marine environment looks like, to be able to support better monitoring of Oslo Fjord, potentially repair of Oslo Fjord, trying to get the cod back, for example.
Get the cod back. So, David, you had a wonderful set of examples now for making us realize that digital twins are probably the best tool we have for making computer-aided decisions in industrial and social settings. And what's the connection to science?
Well, digital twin is a model for trying to combine modeling, reasoning, structural information in a way, and AI in a way that links it to concrete problems and also delivers it as a concrete piece of software and hardware. Now, what we see is that in most experimental science, what you have is a situation where you have an experiment with observations, with a process where those observations are then dealt with a theory. That theory is a model, and then that information is then stored in a way so that we can hopefully replicate it. Now, it means often your experimental or clinical researcher is building some sort of digital twin framework on their own PC anyway. You've got observations, you've got a model, and you're trying to make some decision. Now, what we can see is that in a lot of areas, you can actually increase the speed of access to data, you can increase the accuracy of data, you can provide support to interdisciplinary research by investing some money into platforms which enable you to get easy access to the observational data that you need, share that observational data with other researchers so that you can actually let them go in and try to model your observational data, and create ecosystems around specific problems, like the one I was talking about observation of Oslo Fjord, where you're, again, bringing in lots of different disciplines and trying to consolidate their data into something that is able to be enriched by the fact you're bringing in lots of models and providing a platform for people to make different sort of analyses and decisions based on that data.
Very interesting. So, David, for the people coming to your course, what have we kind of summarized the most important points here, or do we need to add something more?
No, not really. What we're going to do is we'll be presenting a concept of what a digital twin is and letting you discuss what your digital twin is. We'll also be dealing with the background theory that is needed. We'll be dealing with the IT nuts and bolts of how you screw a digital twin together. And then we will also be dealing with some of the intellectual challenges which are necessary around a digital twin, which are related to how do you make sure that your model's good enough for a digital twin? How do you make sure your model's robust? How do you deal with uncertainty in data? How do you deal with the problem that nobody ever has the same naming and understanding of objects? So you actually have to build an understanding or a common way of talking about things to actually link that data together and get it together from different databases. Then on the third day, we'll actually go through and look at some practical examples around digital twins in science, digital twins in medicine and society, and digital twins in industry. And then the assignment you get to do is to go away and write a little feasibility study for your own favorite digital twin.
Sounds very interesting and approachable. So thank you so much, David, for making the topic of digital twins, which we all have been hearing about, a little bit closer and very, very inspiring.
Okay, well, thank you for the time and the conversation, Sylvia.
Du har nå lyttet til en podcast fra LØRN.tech, en læringsdugnad om teknologi og samfunn. Nå kan du også få et læringssertifikat for å lytte til denne podcasten på vårt online universitet LØRN.university.